أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي رحمنا برسوله ورزقنا بكتابه وهدانا على ولاية أهل بيت نبيه، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلقه خاتم أنبيائه وسيد المرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين، سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي الزهراء المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. أما بعد، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. The discussion revolving Ibrahim alayhi salam being one of the most prominent figures within the holy religion of Islam and within Judaism and within Christianity. Ibrahim alayhi salam is without a doubt one of the greatest prophets of God, meaning that Ibrahim has such a high position in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to prophets of God, a very big misconception is made that prophets are not tested at all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves them too much for Him to test them with trials and tribulations, but rather the contrary. Prophets of God are the most who are tested in this world. And tonight I'd like to look at Ibrahim alayhi salam's biggest test, his greatest test, and that is Ibrahim's sacrifice. To do this, I'd like to do it in a few steps. Number one, understand why Ibrahim alayhi salam held his son Ismail so dearly to him. Number two, why is it that Ibrahim alayhi salam had made a covenant with God that everyone from his lineage will be a prophet? And how did he make this covenant? And number three, what was the dream that Ibrahim alayhi salam had that later led to Ibrahim's sacrifice? And what was his son Ismail's reaction? Ibrahim alayhi salam has undergone one of the greatest trials a human can face, and that is the trial of not being able to have children at a very young age, at a very old age. In fact, Ibrahim had tried to have a child with his wife Sarah for decades, to the point where Ibrahim had reached his 80s to 90s. When he was in between the age of 86 to 90, Sarah had recommended that he marry her maid Hajar, and then Hajar and Ibrahim would have a child who is known as Ismail alayhi salam. Now imagine you want something for years, you'd hold that thing dearly, correct? Now a child is something that everyone holds dearly, a parent holds dearly. Now imagine you've wanted a child for decades. You're going to hold that child extremely dear to you. You don't want anything bad to happen to this child at all. Yani a normal parent would go to extreme lengths. Imagine the lengths Ibrahim alayhi salam would go to. Ismail is without a doubt one of the most prominent figures within the world of Hajj. If everyone could please politely be quiet. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The brothers have asked me to ask everyone to please remain as quiet as possible, inshallah, for the rest of the program. And we will continue. So Ibrahim, without a doubt, and his son Ismail are two of the most prominent figures within the world of Hajj. Within Hajj rituals, you find that Ibrahim and his son Ismail had built the Kaaba. They were the first to do tawaf around the Kaaba. Ismail's mother Hajar ran between Safa and Marwa 7 times. Ismail kicked his foot into the ground, and you find that the water of Zamzam came gushing out of it. And Ismail was also involved in one more Hajj ritual. This would go on to become Ibrahim's greatest sacrifice. But I have a question for you. Ismail, was he a prophet or not? Yes, he was a prophet, without a doubt. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions him as a prophet of God. Him and later on his brother Ishaq, who would come from Ibrahim's first wife Sarah. Ismail was a prophet, but how did Ibrahim alayhi salam ensure that? Because Ibrahim's father wasn't a prophet. His father before him wasn't a prophet. Ibrahim was a prophet. His nephew Lut alayhi salam was a prophet. But how did Ibrahim ensure that his progeny, people from his offspring, would become prophets and later imams? We use one of the greatest verses within the Holy Quran, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. I am making you an imam for the people. This instantly tells us what? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses the imam. Not you making a vote with one another. You can't choose, because that deviates from the sunnah of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses his leaders on earth. Anyways, we will continue the verse. قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا قَالَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِيَ الظَّالِمِينَ. He said, what about from my offspring, my progeny? He said to him, my covenant will not extend to the wrongdoers. Ismail alayhi salam was 13, 14, not a prophet yet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to test him and his father Ibrahim. What did he do? He gave Ibrahim a dream whereby Ibrahim saw himself slaughtering his son. What did we say? Ibrahim waited decades to have a son. And now all of a sudden Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving him a vision to kill him? It's shocking. But anyways, Ibrahim instantly understood it, as he is a prophet of God, that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he goes to inform his son Ismail, wakes him up in the middle of the night, and he says, what do you think of this? He tells him the dream, he tells him, what do you think? I don't know about you, but if it was me, I'd get out of bed running. How did Ismail alayhi salam reply? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He says, قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. He says, my father, do as you are ordered, you will find me, insha'Allah, from the patient ones. So they embark from Mecca towards Mina. In Mina, they will carry out the sacrifice. But Ismail had a few conditions. He said, 1, I need you to tie me back so that I cannot run away. 2, I need you to tie your clothes back so that my blood doesn't get on you. 3, I need you to make sure that we go away from my mother and my mother is unaware and does not see. And finally, sharpen the blade as much as possible, for I know that death is a very difficult process. Ibrahim, with tears in his eyes, literally dropping to the floor, says, my son, you have made me go through an easy process. You have made this very easy for me. You are my aid and supporter. So what happens? They go towards Mina. On the way, Iblis comes in the form of an old man, and he says to him that this isn't from God, this is from Shaitan, turn back. Ibrahim alayhi salam repelled him. He said, go away. Then he goes towards Hajar in this form of an old man, and he says, did you know that your husband is about to kill your son? And he says that this is from God. What does Hajar reply? She says, did he say it's from God? He said yes. She replied to him, if he says it's from God, then he is right to obey his Lord. Imagine the taqwa, the God consciousness coming from one family. Ibrahim sees a vision of sacrificing the one thing he's wanted most in his life. Done for Allah. Ismail hears this from his father. Done for Allah. Hajar, the mother and wife, finds this out from Iblis, and she says, if it's for Allah, then he is right in doing it. Now, when this happened, Ibrahim placed the blade on Ismail's throat, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah As-Safat, we called out to him, O Ibrahim, you have fulfilled the vision. This is how we reward those who do good. We replaced his sacrifice with a ram, and Jibreel brought a ram and placed it in the position of Ismail. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues and ends this chapter of telling the story about Ibrahim's sacrifice by saying, Salamun ala Ibrahim. Now the thing is, when you give something for the sake of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returns it with something better. Ibrahim wanted to give his son for Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised both of their positions and gave them a ram instead. He made Ibrahim Khalilullah, an imam and a prophet. He made Ismail a prophet, and from his progeny will come the prophets. And he made sure that everyone in the world till today will know their names in Judaism, Christianity and Islam. Now what about the woman in Medina who had to sacrifice not one but 4 of her sons? Ja'far, Abdullah, Uthman and Abul Fadl al-Abbas. al-Baneen, we remember her on a night like this one, the 4th night of Muharram al-Haram, whereby we remember the sacrifice that she made. Similarly to Ibrahim alayhi salam, she gave 4 of her sons. And we said that Allah returns any sacrifice with something greater. What did he return the sacrifice of al-Baneen with? 1400 years. You still hear her name and her sons' names being said in every majlis. Every majlis. You hear al-Baneen, Abul Fadl, Abbas, Ja'far, Uthman, Abdullah. These 5 names are in every majlis, in every Muharram for 1400 years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised their position. Sometimes we go through these trials and tribulations where we have to sacrifice something. You don't think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to return it and make it greater? May it be haram or halal. You give up something, you sacrifice it for Allah, Allah will return it greater. Yusuf gave up a haram woman and continued with his mission for Allah. Allah gave him the domain of Egypt. Allah made him the king of Egypt. You give up a haram or a halal for the sake of Allah, as long as you're sacrificing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will return it with something better, greater, and something that will benefit you. For truly, who is He if not the one who provides? He is Al-Razzaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره ومن المستشهدين من بين يديه يا الله. وصل اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.